In the middle of Alaska's frozen wilderness, American military engineers began building something so large satellites could see it from space. At first, almost nobody paid attention. The official reports were vague. Missile defense upgrades, expanded radar systems, national security infrastructure. Simple words. But the scale kept growing. New construction sites appeared across Alaska, northern Canada, Greenland, and deep inside remote Arctic terrain. Massive concrete foundations, underground power systems, radar arrays larger than football fields. Some areas were suddenly restricted. Even experienced pilots were warned to avoid certain air corridors. Then came the budget leak. One internal projection suggested the full network could eventually cost more than $175 billion. That number shocked defense analysts. Because this was no longer just a shield. It was becoming something far bigger. Retired military officers quietly started raising concerns. Not publicly. Mostly in closed conferences and defense circles. They all focused on the same question. Why was the United States suddenly preparing for attacks at this scale? The timing made it worse. China had accelerated hypersonic missile testing. Russia was expanding Arctic military infrastructure. And several Pentagon reports warned that traditional missile defense systems could become obsolete within years. For decades, America relied on oceans for protection. Distance mattered. Reaction time mattered. But hypersonic weapons changed that equation. Some could travel faster than Mach 5. Some could maneuver mid-flight. And some might strike targets before existing systems could even respond. That fear triggered a race nobody fully understood yet. Construction crews worked through brutal Arctic winters. Cargo aircraft flew in non-stop. Entire mountainsides were reshaped. Locals near Fort Greely reported strange nighttime activity. Long convoys. Unmarked equipment. Constant drilling beneath frozen ground. Then satellite images revealed something unexpected. The new structures were not isolated sites. They appeared connected, like parts of a single expanding defense wall stretching across the north. And buried inside one leaked planning document was a phrase that changed everything. Layered continental interception architecture. Most people had never heard those words before. But inside defense circles, they carried a very specific meaning. America was no longer preparing to stop a few missiles. It was preparing for something much larger. The deeper analysts looked into the project, the stranger it became. Because the system was not designed around one threat. It was designed around saturation. Dozens of incoming missiles. Multiple directions. Almost simultaneous impact windows. That changed everything. For years, American defense strategy depended on deterrence. The idea was simple. Nobody attacks if both sides know retaliation is guaranteed. But inside classified defense meetings, that confidence had started to crack. Military planners feared a future where traditional response time no longer existed. A future measured in seconds, not minutes. And buried inside congressional budget discussions, officials quietly mentioned something disturbing. Loss of continental reaction depth. Most people never heard the phrase. But defense experts understood immediately. America's geographic advantage was shrinking. Fast. Then another detail surfaced. Several new radar facilities were positioned far beyond normal interception zones. Deep into the Arctic. Closer to polar flight paths. Closer to where hypersonic weapons might briefly become detectable. That was the first major clue. The system was not just defensive. It was predictive. Engineers were trying to build a network capable of seeing attacks before current systems even recognized them. And that required something enormous. New satellites. AI-assisted tracking systems. Underground data centers. Massive cooling infrastructure hidden beneath frozen terrain. One former contractor described the project as an attempt to build a continental nervous system. That phrase spread quickly online. Then suddenly disappeared. Several discussion threads were removed within hours. Defense forums went silent. And journalists trying to access certain procurement documents found entire pages heavily redacted. The secrecy only intensified public curiosity. especially after unusual military cargo flights increased across northern airbases. Elmendorf, Thule, Clear Space Force Station. Places most Americans had never heard of suddenly became critical pieces of a growing network. Then came the mini-twist nobody expected. Some experts began warning that the project itself could trigger a new global arms race. Because once one nation builds a near-impenetrable shield, other nations may feel pressured to strike before it becomes fully operational. That possibility changed the entire conversation. The defense wall was supposed to prevent war, but critics feared it might quietly increase the chances of one. And somewhere beneath the Arctic ice, construction still continued around the clock. Faster than before. By early winter, the project had expanded far beyond radar stations. New contracts started appearing across the American West. Underground facilities, hardened communication hubs, emergency command infrastructure buried beneath mountains. Some were officially linked to cybersecurity. Others had no clear explanation at all. But defense researchers noticed a pattern. Almost every location connected back to missile detection and response timing. Seconds mattered now. Maybe even milliseconds. Then another unsettling report surfaced. The Pentagon had quietly tested AI-assisted battlefield coordination during simulated missile attacks. The results shocked analysts. In several scenarios, human operators reacted too slowly. The system performed better when artificial intelligence made the first decisions. That revelation triggered immediate concern. Former military officers warned about automated escalation. Because once machines begin calculating response windows, human hesitation disappears. And in nuclear strategy, hesitation was often the only thing preventing catastrophe. The public barely noticed the reports. But inside defense communities, the mood had changed. Some experts no longer described the defense wall as protection. They described it as preparation. Then came the blackout. For nearly 3 hours, multiple civilian tracking systems in Alaska temporarily lost access to airspace data near key military zones. Officials blamed a communications failure, but local observers reported something unusual. Heavy aircraft movement, constant engine noise, convoys entering restricted mountain facilities after midnight. One retired air traffic controller later admitted the silence felt intentional. Like somebody wanted fewer eyes in the sky. That comment spread quickly online, then disappeared. Again. But the biggest twist came from space. New satellite launches linked to the project were not defensive in the traditional sense. Some appeared designed for persistent orbital tracking, watching missile trajectories continuously. From launch to interception. To many analysts, that meant America was no longer building isolated defenses. It was building a permanent global detection grid. A system capable of monitoring military movement almost anywhere on Earth. And once that kind of visibility exists, other nations start adapting. Russia accelerated Arctic bomber patrols. China expanded underground missile silo construction. Military spending surged across multiple regions at the same time. Quietly. Rapidly. Almost like governments believed something irreversible had already begun. Then an internal defense assessment leaked one final line. A sentence so alarming parts of the document were immediately classified again. The transition window may already be closing. Nobody publicly explained what that meant. But after that leak, construction activity across the network intensified overnight. The deeper investigators dug into the network, the more one detail kept resurfacing. Redundancy. Everything had backups. Backup power. Backup communications. Backup command centers. Even backup interception systems, hidden beneath separate military jurisdictions. It was designed to survive attack after attack. That realization disturbed several former Cold War analysts. Because systems built purely for defense usually protect cities. This one protected continuity. Government continuity. Military continuity. Operational continuity. As if planners expected part of the country could go dark, while the network kept functioning. Then came another discovery. Several construction contracts referenced hardened underground fiber corridors stretching thousands of miles. Some followed existing military routes. Others cut through isolated terrain far from civilian infrastructure. One contractor described portions of the network as buried arteries. That phrase spread quickly among defense forums. People began comparing the system to a living organism. Sensors as eyes, satellites as nerves, command centers as the brain, and interception sites as reflexes. But the emotional reaction inside military circles was becoming more complicated. Not everyone felt reassured. Some feared the opposite. Because the stronger the shield appeared, the more pressure rival nations might feel to overwhelm it before completion. That fear intensified after intelligence reports suggested rapid expansion of hypersonic programs overseas. Then came the Arctic incident. A surveillance aircraft operating near northern interception zones reportedly detected unusual electronic interference for several minutes. Systems temporarily failed. Tracking signals distorted. Communication channels flickered. Officially, nothing serious happened. Unofficially, multiple defense observers believed someone had tested the network. That possibility changed the mood immediately. The project was no longer theoretical. Other nations were already reacting to it. Then the mini-twist arrived. A former Pentagon strategist publicly admitted that the wall could never be perfect. No shield ever is. And that may have been the real danger. Because if leaders begin believing they are protected, they may become more willing to take risks they once avoided. That single statement triggered fierce debate. Not about technology, about human behavior, about miscalculation, about what happens when world powers stop fearing consequences the way they once did. And while that debate intensified, new launch platforms quietly appeared along remote sections of the Pacific coast, far from public attention, far from major cities, but positioned with remarkable strategic precision. Then satellite imagery revealed something even more unsettling. The network was no longer facing outward alone. Parts of it had begun turning inward across the continental United States itself. At first, the inward-facing systems confused analysts. Missile shields are usually built to detect threats from outside a country, not inside it. But as more infrastructure maps surfaced,